All right. Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gent, or I don't know how many ladies watch it, but if you do, thank you for watching. We're back again, the Three Stooges. So we're going to talk today about the new Hegel H400 integrated amp slash streamer slash DAC slash, Swiss Army knife, except it's made in Norway. Oh, sorry, it's not made in Norway. It's designed in Norway. For those of you, yes. The few of you that will, I'm sure, start spamming at the bottom, made in China. Yes, it's made in China. But so is most of the consumer goods that you will use. And as a serious aside, it's come a long way, putting politics aside, it's come a long way where China used to be known for making really bad products. I know, I was there. I saw the beginning, I saw how bad things were, and I've seen also how well improved they've become. So for those of you who still think that way, be warned, because if you are in the competitive business where you have to compete with extremely high quality manufacturing against countries that have improved dramatically, be careful. And I don't mean that in a political way. I'm just saying, just be aware of that. Anyway, having said all of that, the Hegel H400 came in 3-4 weeks ago. We'd been waiting for quite a while because they had discontinued the 390. And finally when it arrived, we were all excited. We did the unboxing, which whoever is going to do the editing will put a link to it. Our famous unboxing videos. And then I told the guys we should do a review on the H400. Now, at a later date, we will compare it to the 190, which is the model below it, and the 600, which is the model above it. This is sort of, in terms of pricing, the sweet spot. So speaking of pricing, the H400 is $69.95 US, and it's $83.95 Canadian. So it's under 10,000 Canadian. It's rated at 250 watts into 8 ohms, and it says stable into 2 ohms. Now, I wish, it's one of my little things with Hegel, there's a few, and this is one of them. I wish they would, if you're going to give specs, why not talk about your 4 ohm capability? And stable in 2 ohms helps. You mentioned the 4,000 damping factor. And then besides that, the H400, some of the things they've improved on, it's got a new streaming platform, which is apparently derived from the H600. And it also has a new DAC board using a new DAC chip or chipset. It's based around the ESS Saber 9038, I think it is. Capable of AirPlay, Roon, Google Cast, Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, and so on and so on. The system that we used, at least I used, I think the guys used similar things as well, straight from Ethernet into the unit itself, and then used the Sonus Faber Soneto 8 G2, the latest version, and I also listened to it with the MoFi source point 888. I had previously also used the Eversolo, but we'll talk about that later. I'm not sure if the guys did or not. We didn't have any H390s to compare, so I wish we did, because it would have shed light on some of the things that I thought about as I was listening to it. All right, who wants to start?
Okay. My first track is from the Shawshank Redemption.
That's a great movie.
OST, yeah, of course,
classic.
yeah. Raise your hands if it's on TV and you'll just watch it.
Oh, absolutely.
Every month and a half, I think it's on. In our
it's
home.
like The Usual Suspects.
We watched it. We literally watched. My wife watched it a few nights ago.
Yeah.
Literally. That's why I think I was.
Can you believe how young Morgan Freeman was when he did the role?
Yeah, he was like 70 at that
Yeah,
time.
but he looked so young. He looks like, wow. Anyway.
But he'd been acting since the
yeah.
60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So this is called the Stoic Theme. I believe on the album, if I'm not mistaken, there's also a theme called Sisters, which is almost like a different variation of this. If you remember the movie, you remember who the sisters are. For a classical recording, let's be honest, it's classical recording, it has extremely deep, powerful bass right at the beginning, and that continues throughout the song. The 400 handled it very, very well. It was very, very dynamic. You could still hear the grittiness in the bow. It portrayed it very well. When the strings come in, it's very smooth. It can be sometimes a little bit harsh because it's a very, very powerful. It's a very, very powerful cut. I'm going to move on to my next one because there's a little bit of a backstory here. When I was in my early 20s, I was a manager of a service department in a mall that had a Future Shop. If you guys remember, Future Shop sold CDs for a long time.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not Canadians, Future Shop was the equivalent of Best Buy or Circuit City. They had a whole bunch of locations, and they were eventually bought by Best Buy and then assimilated.
Yeah. In fact, for a long time, other than the colors and the branding colors of the stores, the flyers were identical, the prices were identical, the stock was identical. So anyway, they used to have these box sets of classical music. And I would go in during my lunch hour and I would just buy box sets because they were cheap. They would just have them in bins. And I bought a whole bunch of box sets. One of them was the Beethoven symphonies. And I don't know if you're like me, sometimes when you hear a particular recording, no matter how good the other recordings are, this is the recording that you fell in love with. And I can't remember who the orchestra was. It was like some nondescript, like Slovak Philharmonic, like some nondescript arbitrary name. And I've been searching in vain on Tidal and Qobuz.
Just watch all of our friends from... How dare you!
So I've been trying to find these cuts, and there are so many recordings on Qobuz and Spotify and Tidal. It's hard to parse through all of this stuff. Like, there's just so much. But I did manage to find one that was very, very similar. And apparently it's a well-known recording. So it's by the Wiener Philharmonic, and it was Beethoven's Symphonies number 5 and 7. Still can't find the other symphonies, can only find these two. It's not the greatest recording. I think it's from the mid-90s. This is a very aggressive performance. Strings are more prominent than the horns. So again, it's up to the conductor to portray the music. So sometimes conductors are horn heavy, or string heavy, or cello heavy, what have you. This one is very string heavy. So that's the kind of conducting that I'm looking for in these pieces. And the Hegel, so I listened to the Hegel on the MoFi 888s and the Sonettos. On both sets of speakers, the 400 handles it very, very well. Even though the recording can be a little bit aggressive, it had a nice smooth quality to it. You could easily hear the different sections come through. And my last one is going to be a vocalist called Xenia Robinos. The name of the track is Black Stars. You could consider this pop, but it still has a very indie feel. So the song and the album is actually quite sparse, although it's quite produced. Like, her vocal harmonies are very well done, can be very, very thick. It's still a very sparse recording or mix. Her vocal harmonies, the separation in her vocal harmonies was beautiful. It just bloomed. It just filled the room. And because I think it's an indie recording, it's not the greatest recording. It still has this this visceral, sparse, open quality where each instrument can kind of shine through. And the 400 handled it very well. So let me see my notes on the 400. It had great dynamic range. The DAC was phenomenal. So I tried the DAC in this, and I also used the Eversolo A6, both going coax out and balanced out. So the balance sounds phenomenal in this amp. Yeah, it handled everything quite well. It seemed like there was power in reserve, like whenever the song demanded it, especially on the last track, the Xenia Robinos, it handles it very, very well. Okay. So yeah.
All right, Louis, your turn.
Okay. So the first track I played was George Benson, Poquito Spanish. That's the name of the track. Typical George Benson, who hums along with his guitar, and beautiful track. If nobody knows, they should go and check it out. And George has a special way of playing his lead guitar compared to other guitarists, and he hums along, and I just love this track. Also, it features a lot of bass, which the 400 handled it quite easily, and I'm telling you, it was rocking the room. Bass is not an issue with this, and I often hear people saying, oh, they wish they had an amplifier with tone controls. You don't need controls with this amplifier. Whatever that recording has, it's going to give you. So, yeah, and the bass in it in the track goes down very low. No harshness at all. I could hear with the G2 Soneto 8s. I have no harshness at all. My second track was an oldie back in the 70s. Tom Jones singing the song Till. It's a cover by him. It was not originally done, but Tom Jones has different levels of his voice, and he can go very high, very low, and he can hold a note for a long time. And with this track, in the end of the song, he holds the note for so long. I'm just wondering how come he didn't run out of breath. Usually male vocals too, on some recordings, you could hear that there's sibilance and etching in the sound, but with the 400, you don't get that at all. So to me, it's very neutral. It's smooth, and it gives you more of what the recording was like, most likely from the studio recording. It's not adding, it's not subtracting, it's just it just moves along very smoothly. My third track was with Marcin. Some people say Marcin, but it's Polish and it's Marcin. He did this instrumental of Chardet's Smooth Operator.
He does?
Yes. And it's amazing. It's new. This CD just came out in September, so it's a new CD. I didn't go through all the tracks, but I decided to try this one out. He's a phenom when it comes to lead guitar. I mean, by far, he's one of the best. And at his tender age, yes, it's definitely something what people should listen to. The other guy is Italian young kid too, Mancuso.
Matteo. Yeah.
Matteo Mancuso.
Yeah,
he's amazing. But coming back to this track, you could hear, the speed of his on the fret. Displayed, and there's no etching, no sibilance. It just portrayed how good the recording is as well. And in some parts of it, there's a deep bass in it. It's either a bass machine, I don't think it's a bass guitar, or I don't know if it's him slapping the guitar like in Kashmir, but
electronic like the other.
It could be It could be an electronic generated bass, but it goes down deep. The 400 played it no problem at all, and I had set the volume at 75 dB for that level. So with that track, I'm listening at that level, and I'm telling you, the bass coming out of the G2s was just phenomenal. That's it.
Okay. So far, nobody likes the amplifier. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, as I didn't know that Mike also compared it with the Eversolo. So we were using the Eversolo in that room because it's a room where we demonstrate all sorts of products in more affordable price ranges, so to speak. And so we always use the Eversolo because it's one of the more affordable streamers that we carry, and it's really good value. Plus, it's very easy to use. It's very reliable, not like our Rune server that constantly conks out and you start wanting to throttle somebody, and you just open up the Eversolo app and it works. So so we use that all the time. And if I'm not wrong, the Eversolo uses the same chip as what's in the Hegel. Now, it might be a slightly different one, but it's the same manufacturer. In any case, so I thought it'd be interesting to compare the two. So I listened to the Eversolo's DAC, and then I used it, and then I just used the Hegel by itself with the Ethernet straight in. And so a few days ago, I sent an email about 5 o'clock in the morning to everybody saying, we got to solve the Rune problem once and for all. It keeps crapping out at me, and it's early in the morning, so there's no traffic. It's not the reason why. And because I was listening, and the Rune nucleus that we have wouldn't respond in a timely fashion. It would just hang up, or it wouldn't surge. It was driving me nuts. So then I switched over, but when it worked, I got a really good sense of the sound. So I switched over to the Eversolo using the Eversolo's DAC initially, and I was listening and I thought, oh my God, this sucks. As horrified and as disappointed as I was with the Rune, when it worked, it sounded great. But then when I used the Eversolo's internal DAC, it just muffled everything. Everything became smaller. The clarity and detail all went away. And I thought, well, okay, at least it works. Maybe I can use this as a reference. Well, I couldn't. Literally, after about a minute or 2 minutes of listening, I said, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I know how good it can sound. This sucks. So I stopped. Anyway, thanks to Lewis, he brought in a new Rune nucleus, the ones that they're selling now. And then Curtis set it up, and since then it's been working flawlessly. Fingers crossed it'll continue to do so. So then I listened to it again yesterday and today. And I must tell you, again, this is not a slight on the Eversolo. For what it sells for and what it is, it's very, very good value. If you're looking for an external streamer that's affordable, it's a great option. It's just that what the Hegel is capable of is so much better, at least to me. So anyway, I started listening to the Hegel with the MoFi 888 speakers. Now, for those of you who would like to know more, we did a review of the MoFi 888s, and they'll put a link down below. I think all of us really, really like those speakers. The only two things, observations or caveats or slight concerns that I had with the speakers is that, one, the bass is so deep and so powerful, you need to make sure your room is big enough and you've got a good enough amplifier that'll control the bass and will give it the kind of quality that it can do. And then the second thing is that it can sound a little bit too rich. What was the word I used yesterday when I mentioned the 888?
Mellow?
Mellow. It can sound a little bit too mellow because it's so smooth and so sweet and so rich. It's really enticing. When I mentioned that to Mike, Mike says, I love the speakers. I can play anything on it. And he's right, because when it comes to just music instead of audiophile recordings, which Mike and I play all the time, you can play some horrible recordings, but music that you love, and you'll just wallow. You'll just go, this is great, right? Because it does have an inherent rightness to it, but it's just, for me, a little bit too much. Like coffee with 6 or 7 lumps of sugar, a little bit too much. So when I hooked up the Hegel to it, the 400 to it, it's like, oh wow, bass is really well controlled, as everybody has pointed out. Still has that deep, powerful, authoritative bass, but the notes are clearer, very well controlled. And now the clarity is also better. I hear more distinction in the notes. I hear more in the transparency. It just made the speaker even better. And so for those of you who like the MoFi and you're thinking about buying it, consider the Hegel. At least listen to it and see what you think. Then I switched over to the Sonus Faber, and it just opened up. Everything that I loved about the Sonus Faber, the MoFi, I loved even more with the Sonus Faber. It's like suddenly I lifted a bunch of veils and I hear even more clarity, even more detail, even more speed. Now, to be fair, the Sonus Faber is substantially more money. It's maybe so about maybe double the money. So we're not talking about small change here. But it is no doubt, to me, a much better speaker. And if I had the funds, I would easily spend the difference. In every way, I preferred it. Maybe with the exception of if I really liked a lot more bass, the MoFi in that sense had a little bit more bass than the Sonus Faber. Not that the Sonus Faber didn't have bass. It had plenty. Trust me, it had plenty. But everything just improved. I'll give you a couple of musical examples. Abdullah Ibrahim and the band Ikaya. The track is the album is called Sotho Blue. The track is called Calypso Minor. This is a cut that I was introduced to by a playlist that David Solomon created. I'll talk about David Solomon in another video, which we will do after this. This is a superb recording. Abdullah Ibrahim plays the piano. And when you listen to this recording, all the instruments are so well done. The tones are almost perfect. They're captured really well. There's a balance of clarity without harshness. Sometimes when you record wind instruments or brass instruments, you get the detail, but then you get a little bit too much of the harshness, and then you don't enjoy it. For example, Tower of Power. I love Tower of Power, but it's recorded relatively poorly, and so, either the dynamics are quashed or it gets harsh and then you don't enjoy it. Or Chicago, it's the same kind of thing. Not with this. This recording is almost perfect. And if you're looking for a great recording to check out, this would be one. The piano is the sound of the piano is just absolutely beautiful. Just like you can easily hear the difference between the tenor saxophone and the alto saxophone. Both were playing. When the trombone came on, you instantly know that's a trombone. It's a completely different sound. So with the Hegel, it's so neutral and so good that you easily hear all these differences. Another album. So this cut is Keith Greninger and Diane Kai, Looking for a Home by Blue Coast Records. Way back, we're talking 25 years ago or so, I was at I think it was a Chicago CES, so during the summer. I don't recall it now if it was a Chicago or the winter CES. I was walking the halls and I walked into this room and music started playing and I instantly fell in love. I thought, what the hell is that? This is wonderful. And then I noticed that there was somebody in the room that I recognized, and so he says, "Oh, Adrian, here, this is a free sampler of the music that we're playing, and it's by this recording, record label called Blue Coast Records." And the recording engineer and also the founder, her name is Kuki Marenko. Some of you will know this. Anyway, it's basically just two guys. Keith Greninger, I believe, composed the song, and he plays the acoustic guitar, and Diane plays the slide guitar. Very simple. Keith is writing about this person who has had a really hard life. On the day he was born, his father left, and then he goes around and he's constantly being judged. He's in a courthouse, and he's pleading with the judge to give him a break. Sounds like a country song. But when you listen to it, it's sung with such tenderness and heartfelt emotion. And Cookie, to her credit, recorded this, captured this magical performance beautifully. Listen to it and see what you think. Shortly after I had that CD, I somehow lost it, and I was just heartbroken because I couldn't find it. Anyway, years later, it's on Tidal. And then now it's on Koba. So for those of you who don't know this cut, listen to it. When you listen to it, you will get shivers. You will hear the lyrics and go, wow, this is fantastic. And then the last track to recommend, Bugaloo To Beck by Dr. Lonnie Smith. And the track is called Paper Tiger. So right off the start, first note, I listened to it and go, I didn't know this album as well. And again, thanks to David Solomon, I'm really enjoying it, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Very first note, I thought, that's a Hammond. Just one note. That's a Hammond. It was that good. The system is so good and so transparent. That's a Hammond. Now, why do I know the Hammond? Because many, many years ago, when I was relatively young, I moved to Canada. A friend of mine in university, he was an amateur musician, and he had money. So he was collecting all these different instruments, and I was starting to think about buying a synthesizer. I went to his house, and he was showing me all these synthesizers. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, that's the Hammond. And he plugged it in and played it. And within seconds of hearing that, I said, wow, I've never heard a sound like that. It is so unique. You played, you know, and the whole thing. For those of you who don't know what a Hammond is, go on YouTube and see if you can listen to some. Oh, once you hear it, you'll know, because there are still to this day musicians, professional musicians, well-known musicians who will play the Hammond precisely because it creates a certain sound that you cannot duplicate. It is so unique, right? You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, you hear that and you go, wow. It's like a combination of a church organ with grittiness and with a certain, I don't know how to describe it. You got to hear it. And within seconds, that's a Hammond. And I had no idea what this is. Again, I don't know what this album is. And I started looking in the notes and so on, and I had to Google it and finally go, oh, it's a Hammond. Makes sense. Again, another great recording where all the instruments are so well recorded, so beautiful. And regardless of the level I was playing, I was just drawn into the music. It just blew me away. I said this was the last one. Well, I'll just give you one last cut, because some of you will complain if none of us mention any classical music. This is Vivaldi Concerto for 2 cellos in G minor with Ophélie Gaillard. I can't pronounce the name, and Pulcinella Orchestra. It's oftentimes quite difficult to find a really good classical recording. This is one. Again, check this out. The sound of the instruments is so beautiful for 2 cellos. So the cello's on the right, and when you listen to the cello, it's got that resonance. Cello's a big body instrument, and when it plays and it's captured properly, it's got this absolutely glorious resonance. And then you hear the strings, and it's a beautiful contrast between the sound of the strings and then the body. And then the violins come in, and the same thing. Violins are beautiful, clear upper register, but with no harshness, no brightness, just glorious sound. Check out this recording. It is absolutely superb. One of the most beautifully recorded classical recordings I've ever heard. All of that is to say, as far as I'm concerned, the Hegel does a masterful job of reproducing what's on the recording. Now, these are just 4 examples I'm giving you. I played a lot of recordings, good and bad, and in all cases, it was able to reproduce what was in front of it really, really well. All right, final thoughts?
Huge recommendation. For value, it's just aesthetically, I think Hegel can do a little bit better. But for value and sound quality, it's definitely an A+.
Yeah. If that's in your budget, it's worthwhile to take a look at it, have a listen to it. Adrian alluded to the fact at the beginning that they don't rate their 4 ohm and 2 ohm loads. It's been here for 3 or 4 weeks now, and I've demoed Maggie's 2.7s with it, handled them with ease, and they can be difficult to drive. And honestly, on some other lower-priced Hegel products, you can hear the difference when it's driving Maggie's. Although it doesn't have an issue, you can hear how effortless the 400 was. It's very transparent, so when I was hooking up different sources to the same input, you could readily hear the differences between the sources. Yeah. So as Lewis said, whatever's in the recording, it kind of presents it in a very neutral, transparent way. I love it. I think it's a great amp. I really do. You're right. I wish we had the 390 here to compare because we all like the 390 as well.
I think it has more balls than the 390.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, because
more control on the
if I
bass.
can remember the 390, even on the MoFis, I don't think we got the same bass what is coming out, and we don't vary our listening tracks, our audition tracks that much. So just to recall, if I can recap my auditory memory here, the 400 is a much better amp than the 390. But, you know, if you bought the 390 on the closeout, I mean, it's a fantastic amp anyway. But the 400 is definitely a step. I don't think you'll have a lot of competition with that 400 out there right now in the marketplace. That's my, even after going to the show. I didn't do a lot of rooms at the show, but for price range and everything, that the 400 is something people should be looking at.
Yeah, so in the future, we're going to do a comparison between the, I think I mentioned the H190V versus the 400, and then with the 800 as well, sorry, the 600. And then we might also compare with other integrated amps that we sell, similar price range as well. So this way, it'll give you an idea of what to look out for and what's available. I can say without hesitation, and I, for various reasons, didn't want to, but I loved it. The guys know what I'm talking about. I can't lie. It's really, really, really good. It is able to reproduce not only the sound, but the magic of the performance if it's in the recording. This last album I mentioned, the Vivaldi, it's so good. I listened to the entire album. It was so good. I just got lost in the music. Just absolutely wonderful. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. If you have heard the H400 or you just bought one, please comment. Let us know what you thought. If you have a Hegel, let us know why you like it. If you own Hegels and you didn't like it, let us know why as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.